welcome to the Ghost of Harrenhal. My name's Simon.
And I'm Mackelly.
Thank you for joining us for episode 201 of our chapter-by-chapter book review of A Song of Ice and Fire by George Martin. Today, we'll be discussing chapter 57 of A Storm of Swords. That's Daenerys 5.
And as we always do about this time, we're going to chat about the chapter and try not to spoil any future plot points for you. And hopefully we're going to provide you some entertainment along the way.
We'll summarise what happened, discuss our thoughts on it, provide some useful background, compare it to the television show, indulge in a little pedantry, and cover some relevant news and listener correspondence. Be sure to check out the show notes, they'll provide some additional information about the characters and other things of note in this chapter. How are you, Mackelly?
I'm doing well. I think my house may have set some sort of record, or at least tied some sort of record.
I can't imagine what, but go on.
So I was standing at the end of my yard earlier this week with talking to my neighbor from across the street, and I was just lamenting about how things outside the house have not gone swimmingly. One of our big trees in the front is dying, and the person that I know this is a first world problem, but I've hired some person to cut my grass because our company reimburses us for it. That's the only reason I'm doing so. And he doesn't maintain his lines very well. Like most of the point of cutting grass is to get the nice, perfect lines that go back and forth across your yard. He's all over the place. He goes left, he goes right, he does circles, he's here and there. And so I was just lamenting about these things, and my neighbor just looks, we're looking at the house, and he goes, "What is that?" And I follow his line of sight, and there is something attached to the underside of like where the gutters are on my roof, like there's that little soffit, like maybe it's called, I don't know, the little overhang area.
Go with that.
And so I get closer, and it is an absolutely enormous wasp's nest.
Yes, I assumed that's what it was.
So I'm like, oh, great! It's right over the door. Like you walked past it when you came for the 200th episode. You walked past it. It was right there. So thankfully, you didn't notice it either. So I call a place to come remove these wasps from my presence, and the guy came out yesterday, and he looked at it and said, "That is one of the largest nests I've ever seen."
Bravo!
This is a professional saying this.
Well, congratulations.
I know. Finally, I did something noteworthy. So he said, those aren't just your regular wasps. Those are, have you ever heard of bald-faced hornets?
No.
They're very scary looking things. They have these long black bodies and then these like skeletal white faces. And they're terrifying. and he says, he's telling me about them. He's explaining why he's going to kill them instead of rehome them. Because, if they were honeybees, he would rehome them. But depending on the type of insect, whether he rehomes it or kills it. And he's explaining to me why he's going to kill it. And one of the things he mentions is that they're carnivores. And God. I was like, what are we dealing with here? Flesh-eating, giant, terrifying wasps right above my front door.
Skull-faced wasps.
I know. They're terrifying. So, so he sprayed them yesterday. He sprayed the nest yesterday because he said the nest was so big. He said there's easily more than 100 adult wasps and hornets, I guess, in that nest, and probably more larvae than that. And he said, in fact, it's so big that it is probably near the point where a new queen will be made, and that queen will take half the hive somewhere else.
Oh, fascinating.
Yeah. The fact that a queen is made, I thought, I guess a queen has to be made,
presumably.
But, yes, they're not just anointed, but it hadn't reached that point yet. So it was like bursting it to, it was like filled to capacity. Yeah. I'll send you a picture and I'll put it on our social medias. It is something. Anyway, sprayed it yesterday, and he said probably more than 50 or so are out foraging right now. So if I knock the nest down right now, they would just like hang around until they die. So he was going to spray it yesterday. The foragers will come back, go into the nest, die, and then the next day, when they've all done that and they're all dead, he will knock the nest down.
Wow.
So all day, is right next to our porch. So all day long, I would look out and you just see like wasps dropping out of the sky.
Wow.
And there's like a pile. Oh, it's pretty gross.
That is
they are huge.
Amazing.
So
anyway,
that's over.
Not to get hung up on the details of your story, but can I say, you and I have always had a very different philosophy to the mowing of the grass.
Yes, we have. Much of the outside chores, we take different philosophies
because
on it.
I'm entirely with your mowing guy. The point of mowing the grass is to mow the grass as quickly as possible and get in out of the heat. That's the point of mowing the grass, not to create straight lines. That is entirely... If that happens, a happy coincidence, but...
Apparently the guy I hired to cut my lawn feels the same way about it as you do.
And I can see why you might think that you want the Mackelly type of grass cutting.
Right.
Yes, I can see that.
Yes, I'm paying for lines. I'm not just paying to get the grass shorter. I want my lines. And he's a neighbor. He lives, maybe 10 houses down from me. So I can't just fire him and say, yeah, I've decided just to do it myself, and then hire someone else.
Did you go check his lawn?
I should have ahead of time. His lawn is mostly weeds, so I should have seen that coming. Maybe I should have seen it coming in hindsight. Anyway.
So my news is news only to me, not to you.
Uh-oh.
Because after we finished recording the 200th episode, which was a lot of fun, and thanks to everyone for coming to attend that, Mackelly Ray took me to his wine cellar. Well, that's a slight exaggeration. He had a room with some wine in it, but it was wine that he and Stacey made themselves.
We do.
What's the word? I said made, but it feels like you do something else. You.
Well, yeah, we make wine. Yeah,
just make.
Yeah.
I feel like it deserves a better adjective, a better verb, because you brew beer,
Right. Yes, you brew beer. You make wine, I guess.
God.
Yeah, it is pretty lame. There should be something better.
There should be something better there, yeah.
Yeah, it was a COVID quarantine hobby that we started. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately the bottle that I gave you was of our very lowest vintage, I'm afraid. I hope it wasn't too terrible.
No, it was good. It was fine. I mean, we drank the whole thing. It had, I thought, taste-wise, it was as good as what we drink. What we pay for at the store. But it had a little bit of sediment at the end, but not an abnormal amount. A slightly abnormal amount, but not like off-putting. But I thought the taste was totally fine. It was nice.
Good, yeah, good. I'm glad. I'll give you more if you want to, because Stacey doesn't like overly fruity wine, and that vintage that we gave you that was a little more fruity than she would ever drink.
I will say that Carson and I have been struck down with a cold. Lucas came home from work with a cold and gave it to both of us. So our taste buds were not in full force when we drank the wine.
So maybe you didn't even taste it at all.
It seemed good. The evening passed by in a happy fog.
That's right. That's all you're really looking for. Just like getting the grass shorter. You're just looking for a night in the happy fog. Yeah. We've got this 2020 cab. It is so bold and so full-bodied. It's a little too much for Stacey even. She kind of somewhere in the middle between the, that cab and what we gave you was a Cab Merlot Zin blend, I believe.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
So,
which even had a funny name.
Oh, Grateful Red, right?
Red,
is that what that one was called? Yes. The cab is called Firstborn because it was our first batch that we made. Oh, goodness.
Well, yeah, congrats. I mean, really, I was really very impressed. So well done. And also,
well, thank you.
I have to say, I think that you know absolutely everything there is to know about me. I don't think there's a single thing you don't know about me. But you had this, and I had
I,
no idea.
I think it's because, yeah, I mean, we were still recording over
Uh-huh.
quarantine. I never brought it
It
up.
was,
It is so time consuming,
you had
too.
like 200 bottles of wine 5 feet from where you were recording, and it never came up in conversation.
That is
Yeah.
weird. I don't know how it never came up.
Well, Mackelly, I
That's
will say there is the
it
possibility you
did
told me
now.
several times and I forgot all about it. But
Our listeners are going, yeah, we know about all this.
Mackelly, you have to keep remembering. We can't afford us
Right,
both to go
yes.
down like this. All right. Well, let's get down to business. How do we leave Daenerys Targaryen? So last we saw of Dany, she was defeating the slavers of Yunkai with barely any bloodshed. Well, on her side. She'd
Right.
convinced Daario Naharis of the Stormcrows?
Yes.
Thank you. To come over to her side, using his obvious interest in her to her own advantage. So Jorah doesn't trust the hunky, young, handsome Tiroshi. I wonder why not. Dany was also learning more about her brother Rhaegar from Arstan Whitebeard, who clearly knew him quite well. The freed slaves of Yunkai stream from the city and call her mother. Mackelly, why don't we give the summary of this one?
All right. Okay, so Dany and her bloated army of freed slaves reach the walls of Meereen. Her Khalasar is hungry. The Meereenese, forewarned of her arrival, have scorched the earth all around their city, stocked up on food, and retreated behind their considerable walls. She knows that she must take the city quickly before her freed people starve.
But none of her advisors see an easy route. There are no trees with which to build siege engines or catapults. They could tunnel beneath the walls, but they don't have the time. They cannot starve the Meereenese without succumbing first. Two sides of the city face water, a river to the north and the sea to the west, but her three ships won't nearly be enough. And all the while, a Meereenese champion parades before the walls, challenging whoever Dany wants to send. He's really annoying, and when he urinates in their direction, well, that's just rude.
That is just rude. Not as rude as what we're about to hear in a minute, but still rude. Plenty want to volunteer to be her champion. Others caution that she let him bloviate. But she's had it. She sends for and then sends out Strong Belwas. Her thinking is that one, he might well win. The man survived the fighting pits of Meereen, after all. Two, he doesn't really contribute much tactically, so his loss would be a lot easier to swallow than that of her Blood Riders or Daario or Jorah or pretty much anybody else in camp. And three, if he loses, then it's hardly worth crowing about, but if he wins, it's a disgrace to the Meereenese.
Belwas heads out with just a sword and a small shield. The champion, whose name is Osnak Zopal, rides with a 14-foot lance. He rides at Belwas, but in the Westerosi jousting style, rather than what a Dothraki would do, riding straight over the foe. Belwas shows deceptive speed in parrying away the first two runs. On the third, he ducks beneath and cuts the horse with his arak. Now they fight man to man. Belwas is cut, but ultimately decapitates Osnak and defecates towards the city using the hero's cape to wipe himself. There's much rejoicing back in the camp. Dany insists that Belwas gets patched up, but he reminds her that he always lets his opponent cut him so that he can count his victories by his scars.
That was the other rude bit I was referring to earlier, by
Oh
the way.
yeah, got it. Yeah,
Yeah.
as I read about him defecating towards the city and wiping his butt with the dead champion's cloak, I thought, I bet that's the rude part.
That's the rude part, yes. Later, during a council meeting, Brown Ben Plum, the new leader of the Second Sons, mentions that he does know a route into Meereen. The sewers that spew out into the river are unguarded but gated. His experience is that the gates are rusted and vulnerable. But the whole journey appeals to nobody for pretty obvious reasons. Jorah suggests leaving Meereen and continuing on to Pentos, but Dany can't forget the 163 crucified slave children who line the road for her. She won't leave until the Meereenese pay for that.
Dany sends all away, but Viserion flaps over and lands awkwardly on Brown Ben. Dany sees that as a good omen. The dragons like him, she can trust him. They chat a bit more. He claims to be a distant relative. Some ancestor Plum married a Targaryen princess in the days of Aegon. He has no idea which Aegon. Dany is amused and charmed. She and Missandei saddle up for a tour of the encampment while she wistfully considers taking Daario as a lover. She leaves her blood riders behind, but takes Arstan Whitebeard as protector. They find the Unsullied practicing and bathing. She wishes some of the sellswords had similar levels of dedication and hygiene.
I'm sure. They move into the freedman zone, and the people gather to touch her and get her blessing. But one man grabs her and pulls her from her silver. It's Mero, the former commander of the Second Sons who went missing during the battle at Yonkai. He shaved his head and his beard to avoid detection. But before he can kill her, Arstan uses his staff to defeat the Titan's bastard. They head back home, with Arstan apologizing profusely for allowing her to fall into such danger.
Back at camp, Jorah is mad at Arstan for allowing the incident, and then incredulous that a squire with a stick could have dispatched Mero of Bravos. Dany wants him knighted, but both men object. Arstan tells Jorah that he, Arstan, is the better knight. Dany's confused and demands the whole truth. At this point, Jorah recognizes him.
He introduces him as Sir Barristan Selmy, who
That's
betrayed...
Barristan Selmy!
It's Barristan Selmy!
That's where he went!
We've been wondering all this time. Well, yes, he introduces him as Sir Barristan Selmy, and then introduces him as the man who betrayed her house to Sir Robert the Usurper. Barristan says that's the crow calling the raven black. Selmy describes taking Robert's pardon, serving on his small council, with men who sullied the White Cloak nonetheless, but that he fought for Rhaegar on the Trident while Ser Jorah was on the other side of the battle. And that, most interestingly, Lord Varys often reported to the small council on Dany's activities, courtesy of a spy within her ranks.
Dany cannot believe it, but Ser Jorah cannot deny it completely. Only at the start, before I came to learn, she won't hear that word from his lips, he confesses that it was the promise of going home. She sends them both away in an absolute fury. But then it occurs to her that she has a perfect place to send them.
I feel like they're going somewhere without a paddle.
Yes. They might want to borrow Orzan's cloak.
I gotta say, I'm glad to finally drop this Arstan pseudonym. So many times I've almost called him Barristan.
Yeah.
And so glad to no longer have to make that distinction.
And of course, the TV show, because you could see him, they never bothered with this. He was Barristan Selmy from the get-go, so there was no reveal on that.
He didn't.
Well, there was a reveal, but it was the first time she met him. It was revealed who he was. So.
He didn't do like the glasses with the nose and mustache thing. wear a helmet with the visor down all the time. So, I don't know. One of the first bits about the chapter that we get is their movement basically from Yonkai up to Meereen, which is north up the east coast of Slaver's Bay. And
No, you're right. Well, actually, that's an interesting question. Is that the East Coast? I guess it is the East Coast.
Yeah, I think
of the
it's
bay.
the East Coast. Yeah,
but typically, an East Coast, the water would be to the east, but here the water is to the west because it's the coast of a bay.
Oh, it circles
rather than the coast of a continent.
Right. Yes.
But yes, you're right. Keep going. Ignore me.
Well, anyway, they're going up the coast of the bay, regardless of whether it's east or west, and she's got this now. She's conquered the previous two cities, Astapor and Yonkai, and she's got this 80,000 strong horde of people, pretty much just following her, like a pack of locusts. Really, I'm sure, and it just seems like it's not a great idea. I'm not sure if she told them, please go home, if they would listen or not, but it just doesn't seem like a good idea. I'm not sure what the end goal is here.
Have you seen Monty Python's Life of Brian?
Yes.
Where the crowds follow him. And they split into two factions, one following the gourd and one following the sandal.
Yeah, I don't know. What's she going to do with them here?
Yeah. Well, the ideal situation here would be she takes Meereen and kills everyone in Meereen who's a bad guy. Appears to be everyone in Meereen. and then leaves the city to them. This is your city now. Please stay.
But isn't that pretty much what she did with Astapor and Yonkai, and they left it
They do.
anyway?
Yes, good point. Yeah.
I mean, she freed their cities, and it's a long, hard march to Pentos, where there's no room for 80,000 extra mouths in Pentos, and they can't all stay at Illyrio's manse. So
It's pretty big, but
but not that big. I was kind of spitballing while I was preparing for the episode, trying to think of what could they do. And
can I interject with one thing?
yes,
I mean, obviously you've thought about this more than me, but she could say, "You're free to do anything you want, with one exception."
You see where my footprints are going? That's the one direction you can't follow. Aside from that, have at it. It's not an ideal option because they'd have to march through the Red Waste. But I was thinking maybe a city like Vase Teloro, like an empty city. Remember the city where they took refuge in the Red Waste. Now again, that would be another long, hard march, just like they would have to do to get to Pentos.
And
but at least at the end, there's a place they could call their own.
Yeah, but is there enough arable land around there to keep 80,000 alive?
Right, yes, probably not. There was like some orange trees and stuff in the city, but I don't think that's going to do it.
We died a week later, but we tasted oranges.
Not everybody. There was only 12 oranges.
Some just got peeled.
So, I mean, what is the idea? It seems to just be follow Dany and wait for her to perform more miracles. It's unsustainable.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is why sort of revolutions often turn on themselves, because fomenting a revolution is not that difficult. But once you've done it, then you have to rule. And so the revolutionaries become the rulers, and then they suddenly realize, well, actually, we can't just keep doing this. This is not sustainable or acceptable. And then they pare back all of the promises they made,
Right. Yes. I could totally see that.
She's got the advantage of not wanting to rule here, so she could just run away.
She could ride faster than they can walk. She'll eventually outpace them.
We're going to play a game. Everyone turn to the east and see how long you can face that way.
I feel for these people. She freed their cities. Just go home. It's time to just go home.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's kind of irresponsible not to discourage them from following her, but I mean, if she is and they're not listening, I don't know what she's supposed to do, I guess.
I mean, as long as she makes it clear, hey, you have to forage for your own food. I can't promise you any comforts here.
Yeah, if she did, she'd have to conquer every city she crossed from here to Pentos.
Essentially, yeah.
And then Pentos when she got there with the 3.2 million following.
So as they travel from were they most recently Yunkai?
Yeah.
As they travel from Yunkai, the citizens of Meereen knew they were coming, and so brought them a welcome gift, and they actually built signposts pointing in the direction of Meereen. Signposts were made of slave children who were crucified with their fingers pointing in the direction to Meereen. Every mile for 163 miles. I hope the people of Meereen get it.
Yeah.
I think Dany's going to be the one to give it to him.
I mean, in a story with so many awful events, this one is right up there at the very top of just horrendous actions. I mean, they were crucified alive, obviously. Their entrails are hanging out. Oh, just terrible.
Gee, I've just thought of something. Well, I thought of it as I did it. This is TV pedantry, but I'm gonna inject it here if I can.
Okay.
How did they know in the book that there were 163? Because they counted them as they went, right? That's how they knew there were 163. In the TV show, they found the first one, and Jorah said, "There's one every mile." I don't know how he knew that, but and she said,
read the script.
How far are we from Meereen? And he said, "We're 163 miles." Now, That is strangely precise.
It is 162.8 to be exact.
Exactly. So it didn't make any sense that he would know they were that distance from Meereen. So they kind of mixed that up, I thought. You had to
Uh-huh.
get to Meereen to know how many miles you've been seeing the crucified children. So, but
Yes.
that's
I
TV
see.
pedantry. That's not our bag.
Right. Yeah, I see your issue though. It makes perfect
Hmm.
sense. So she sends out, as we described in the summary, she sent out Strong Belwas basically to challenge the Meereenese hero, basically because he didn't really do anything of use. He pretty much just ate and boasted and bossed. Now we know Barristan
Yeah,
around,
yeah.
and that's pretty good use. Pretty good use for him.
Right.
Just
If
pretty
you've got
much the
someone who
only
can
use for
fight and
him.
boast, send him into a
Yeah.
boastful fight, you know?
Yeah, he really hasn't done much to this point. Even at the port of Karth, it was Arstan that defended Dany against the assassin in the Manticore. And so, and of course, it's added benefit that he's a former slave of the city. So there's that additional humiliation.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. And
eh,
presumably quite recognizable too. Like
oh
many within the
yeah,
city would actually recognize him.
it's the guy with all the
Yeah,
scars.
yeah, big
I
guy.
know him. I
Yeah,
remember him. I saw him fight 10 years ago. But it is good to know that his bite is as dangerous as his bark because
right,
he
right.
did a lot of boasting. And
Yeah, yeah.
so it's good to see he
He
could back it up.
could have sort of self-inflicted scars to make him look tough, but in actual
Right.
fact,
Could have been that.
yeah.
But this made me wonder because one of the things she says here is that all he'd done so far was eat, boast, and bellow at Arstan. This is
Uh-huh.
before she knows Arstan is
Yes, yes.
Barristan. And I wondered, does Belwas know what's up? Does he know that Arstan is actually Sir Barristan Selmy? And this is he part of the act here, or does he really think he's bossing this guy around?
I wondered the same thing. I'd be curious to know what happens next time he bellows.
Right.
No,
Although,
not your squire anymore, mister.
right. I I'm Lord Commander of the Kingsguard until
Right.
recently, so I outrank you by a good bit.
Yeah.
Although as you say that, I'm thinking next time Belwas sees Barristan, he might not want him around that closely because
Because?
of where it appears that Belwas or
Yeah,
that
yeah.
Barristan and Jorah are going to be headed.
Good point. Yes.
He might want him on the other side of the camp.
So yeah, I mean, Meereen seems pretty invulnerable, apart from this obvious, like, this exhaust port 1 meter across that, if you use the force, you could get your.
Right.
I mean, it just
One
feels like
flaw.
exactly. You've built the Death Star, man the sewers. Don't let them just come up the sewers.
Or at least have someone whose job it is to check the
The
grates.
integrity of the gate. Yeah, yeah. I mean,
Yes.
I would think that you would need someone to sort of keep the gate from filling up with junk and sticks
True.
and things. So
And
while he's
they,
there,
yeah, check on the integrity. Yeah, absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah,
I think that's going to be the fatal flaw here.
it certainly seems like it very well could be. And Dany, she compares leaving Meereen to, because, well, let me back up a second here. They're trying to think of ways in. That's where this gate of the sewers idea comes from. And Jorah says, how about we just don't? We just keep going. We don't, this is not your war. You came to Slaver's Bay to get an army, not to get dragged into political battles here. Just keep your eye on the prize. And she compares leaving Meereen unconquered to her ability to win back Westeros. So if I can't even get past this, can't even defeat this city, how am I ever going to take the Seven Kingdoms? And Jorah's right in his apples to oranges comparison. Westeros, she'll have allies and time to make battle plans and build siege engines and, oh yeah, much larger dragons, which is
Well,
Jorah's primary point.
presumably not 80,000 starving people to feed the whole time you're sieging.
Right. Yes, good addition to the list there.
That's the real problem. I mean, Jorah is often sort of like right with his kind of real politic, hey, we've got to make the tough decisions here, we've got to do this. But he also,
Yeah.
I mean, how hardened do you have to be to ignore the 163 crucified children? She's never going to
Right.
leave Meereen. She'd rather die than leave
Yeah,
Meereen standing after this?
yeah, that's exactly it. It's not so much about, well, if I can't even take this city, how will I ever take Westeros? It's
Yeah.
vengeance for the
And the other
children.
thing is, she really could do with a place to house these 80,000.
Well, yeah, yeah.
She could
It can,
convince some of them,
unless
see this? It's a nice place. It's got sewers and everything.
it's got sewers. The gates could use some tending to, but aside from
But I
that,
mean, you've got 80,000 of you standing idle.
right.
So the person who came up with the sewers idea was Brown Ben Plum. He seems like a nice character. I liked his
Yeah.
admission that there are old sellswords and there are bold sellswords, but there are no old and bold sellswords.
Yes, I like that
Yes,
too.
yes. Craven enough to have lived a long life.
Yeah, yeah. But about Brown Ben, yeah, I liked his character. I thought he added some unique characteristics to her already unique council. So
Yes. Plus, he's not as dour as Barristan and Jorah,
that's true.
the earnest brothers.
But so one of the things that happens is that Viserion, that after she dismisses everybody from their council meeting, not Viserys. Did I say Viserion
No,
or
you said
Viserys? I
Viserion. You
meant
said the dragon, not the
okay.
not the dead
Uh,
brother.
right, good. I meant the dragon.
If the
As
dead
Brown,
brother had landed on his head, I would have had a very different feeling about him.
it would have been a very different experience for sure. So Brown Ben is walking out with the rest, and Viserion kind of lands on his head and shoulder. And they strike up a conversation about that. Brown Ben says, "I have some Targaryen blood."
Ben and Dany strike up the conversation, not Ben and
Yes,
Viserion. Okay, good, good.
yes, good point.
Yeah,
Good distinction
yeah.
there. And I wondered if Viserion playing with Ben the way he did indicated that dragons can sense those with Targaryen or Valyrian
Oh,
blood,
because
even
he
if it's
said
a
he was
small amount.
Targaryen. I didn't think about that. I was thinking of it more sort of equivalent to the Starks and the direwolves, and the direwolves growl at the people who you shouldn't like, and they lick the hands of the people you should.
Oh, yes. Well, yeah, that could be it too, of course. But
I
he
like,
did mention he's got Targaryen blood, and I
uh,
wondered, is Viserion picking up on the Targaryen blood
yeah,
thing, and that's why he
I like that.
chose
I think
him.
you're right. I also think that you may have hit on a point when you said that Brown Ben, when you inadvertently implied that Brown Ben stuck up a conversation with Viserion, because if Viserion flapped over to me and landed on my head and shoulder, I'm pretty sure I would say something along the lines of,
Help me! Somebody help me! Uh,
so Danny has a bit of a crush on Daario Naharis.
she likes that gold tooth. Multiple times she thinks
Yeah.
about his gold tooth.
Uh-huh. Yeah, well, I mean,
Yeah,
in a world of poor dentistry, the gold tooth can look pretty cool, I would imagine.
I guess so. But she determines that it's good in fantasy, but too risky in reality. I mean, she saw firsthand how Dario betrayed his Stormcrow partners, and she also thinks that her 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 and Dario would crush Jorah. The thought of her being with Dario would crush Jorah. But he's the one that said, well, the latest one that said to her that the dragon needs 3 heads, and he's the one that said you should take 2 husbands and
Mhm.
I should be one of them. So,
But he was really hoping the other one would be less good looking, not more. That's what he was
Yes.
really after. It's funny you said that the thought of Danny and Dario together, that is enough to crush Jorah. Just thinking about
Yes,
that. He's
he
like,
doesn't even
yeah,
need
yeah.
it to be reality. Yeah.
Uh,
I don't feel like he would share very well.
no, no. You could be talking about either of those men in that case.
Yes, right,
Mhm.
right. That's true. But so that quote, the dragon has 3 heads. It originally, it was what Rhaegar said to either Dany or the woman that was holding the baby. presumably Elia Martell. I mean,
Uh-huh.
that we don't know for sure, but we assume it's his wife. He said there must be one more. The dragon has 3 heads. And then later in that chapter, the Undying reiterated the dragon must have 3 heads. And then Jorah repeated it and said you should take 2 husbands after he kissed her. Maybe he was kind of just like backpedaling a little bit and was like, you should take 2 husbands. I'll just be one of them. So
What about Strong Belwas?
And then he followed that line up with, I went back and read that section to make sure I got everything right. He followed that line up with, and I tell you truly, no man in this world will be so true to you as me, which is rather pertinent in this chapter where it's discovered he has not been entirely truthful to her at all.
Yeah. The thing is, I mean, that's kind of the end of the chapter, but we can sort of like talk about it now. She's going to forgive these two. I mean, but first of all, what Barristan did is not duplicitous at all. He fought until he was practically killed to keep
Yeah,
the Targaryens on the throne. When he was recovered, the Targaryens were no longer on the throne, and he was still Lord Commander of the Kingsguard. What are you going to do?
right. Yeah,
Quit?
yeah. Right. Yeah, that's a solid point. It's not like it was an immediate thing. He was injured near death, and it took him time to recover, and by then there was a new king.
Yeah. And Jorah, when he didn't know Dany, he was spying on her to get a pardon so he could come home. You,
Right.
Dany's trying to get home too. People, you understand this concept. But now he isn't doing that anymore. He is her man and will be loyal forever, unless she marries Daario, in which case.
That it's all bets are off. No, I think you're absolutely right. Yeah, she's angry and she's
Yeah,
hurt. We'll
fine.
see.
Get over it.
She's sending them up a creek without a paddle.
Right, yes, for sure. So the Targaryens ride the dragons, and so we only have Dany and we have 3 dragons. So her recruiting 2 others in some way is kind of, well, not a requisite, but it feels like it would fit. The story would fit
Yeah.
better if she could find dragon riders. And as you pointed out, Brown Ben Plum, the dragon liked.
Right.
Maybe it's the presence of some Targaryen blood. So there are Targaryen blood. I mean, Stannis Baratheon, right? Presumably the dragons would like Stannis.
Right. Stannis does have Targaryen blood in him.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. It's unclear if Targaryen blood is needed to ride dragons, but it certainly doesn't
I,
hurt.
yeah, I think you're onto something. I'm thinking that might be a good thing. And so maybe who else is there? Man, they really are all dead, aren't
Yeah, there's not many options. I mean, I don't know. I mean, Jorah's been around the dragons since birth.
they? Yeah.
Maybe they would tolerate him because of that.
Well, if
Iri
they're
and Jiqui.
Iri and Jiqui,
They're
maybe yeah,
like
they feed them.
surrogate
Yeah.
moms. Yes. Yes, that would be somewhat people to consider. But it also, I don't know that it's literal. The dragon must have 3 heads. She does happen to have 3 dragons. But at a figurative sense, the dragon must have 3 heads. We don't know what that means yet. But again, one of the possibilities of the dragon must have 3 heads, if you're talking Targaryen blood, would be Stannis Baratheon,
Yeah.
as maybe it takes 3 dragons to defeat the others, or whatever he thinks is the Rhaegar. When he said that, thought it was that Aegon, his son, was a prince that was promised. So maybe he thinks he has to defeat the great other.
Yeah, but I think you're right. I think you've given me the idea that you need 3 dragon riders too, who need
Right.
to be part of this team. Whether that takes Targaryen blood, I don't know.
Yeah, and it would be kind of a waste to have 2 dragons that don't have riders to help guide them in battle,
Yeah.
So it would be really good if she could find 2 more.
Yeah.
But the thing about Stannis as one of the heads of the dragons is, first of all, we don't know. It's unclear if Lightbringer is real. We don't know if he really is Azor Ahai. if it is real, we have not been told how he managed to acquire Lightbringer.
Yeah.
So, Melisandre thinks he is, but we don't know that he is. And there's a line when I was going back and reading the House of the Undying chapter to think about some of the things here. There's a line that the Undying say that she will see that there's a red sword raised in the hand of a king with blue eyes that casts no shadows. And that certainly sounds like Stannis.
Yes,
He
especially
fits
the
that
shadow
description.
thing. Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's in a section. They kind of do this thing where they break it up into sections, 3 different sections. And that section is, then they call her the Slayer of Lies. So I wonder if she is going to expose Stannis as
For the
false.
fraud he is, that Melisandre.
Yes, yes.
Interesting.
So just something to think about.
Yeah.
Anyway, we've gotten off topic.
Yeah, but it's interesting.
So Dany mentions she thinks about while she's riding through her camp that she tried to arm her freed people as best she can with weapons from the Yunkai and Astapor armory. And I thought maybe she should have tried the Castle Black trick with the straw brothers. If she had dressed them all up like warriors and gave them, weapons and made it look like an 80,000 person strong army, not just like a few hundred army, an 80,000 person strong group of hungry people.
See what you're saying? Although the last thing she needs is more mouths to feed, even pretend ones. But also, I mean, you give a freed slave who presumably is quite fit from the hard work a sword and very minimal training. That person is more dangerous than your typical fat Meereenese slaver.
That's probably true. I think she mentions that Jorah has formed up 4 companies from the slave.
It's not nothing.
From the freed
nothing.
slaves, but then the rest who didn't make it into that company are probably quite
But I would still give them all a sword. I mean, like, first of all, you've taken away all the swords from Yunkai and Astapor in case they change their minds.
Yes. Good point.
And I mean, how big is Meereen's standing army? I mean, you would expect that our Unsullied should be able to take care of that, at least in open battle, which we don't appear to
if
be
they
going
can
to
get
get.
to that.
Yeah.
Yes.
So Mero's surprise attack on Dany, Arstan, not for the first time, lets her get to within an inch of her life before he saves her. Both times it seems justified to a certain extent, but I just wonder if he likes to let it get close so he becomes all the more invaluable as her rescuer.
Right. Barristan the risky, the chance taker.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
given who he is, you'd think he could handle these threats at the drop of a hat, but both times she's almost succumbed and he saved her.
Yeah, I feel like if there were cars in Westeros, he'd be the person that drove for as long as he could with the gas light on to see to see just how far he could push it.
But then the scene with Jorah and Barristan both pleading for their lives whilst throwing shade at the other one is just a fantastic scene. I just love it. I love the fact that they're just going at each other. I mean, scorched earth policy. I mean, neither of them. She's never going to look at either of them in the same light again. You know?
Right? Yeah.
You're both treasonous little rats, is what you are.
They were assuring mutual destruction right there.
For sure. And there's no doubt Jorah's crimes are worse. First of all, Barristan has never done anything against her. Not one thing.
Yeah, I mean, from her perspective, you could say serving Robert could be,
but it wasn't against Daenerys. It was It was not loyal to the Targaryens as he might have been had he quit and thrown down his cloak. But it wasn't anti-Daenerys, whereas Jorah's crimes were against her.
Yes, absolutely, directly against her and her well-being.
Yeah, and if Jorah said, "Well, Barristan keeps letting you almost get killed before he saves you," you'd be like, "You remember you and the wine? How did you know that wine was going to be poisoned?"
I was thinking about that. Yes.
Probably because you
I
told him
wonder
to
if
do
she's
it.
gonna. Yeah, is she gonna think? Wait a second. But he saved me so many times. I mean, remember in Vase Dothrock with the why? Wait a second. How did he
Exactly.
know
Yeah.
that?
Uh,
Yeah. No. So Barristan, he mentions to her that he never lied to her. He said he he squired for a swan early in his life, and he squired for Strong Belwas now. Uh, and the squire that he or the who he squired for in his uh, much earlier in his life in his younger days was Manfred Swan, the head of House Swan and Lord of Stonehelm. So
okay.
that was just a little bit of background
Mhm.
thrown in there for a little free background before we get to the background section. Uh, but yeah, so Jorah immediately attacks Barristan's character. He says, before you stands Sir Barristan the Bold, Lord Commander of the Kingsguard, who betrayed your house to serve Robert the Usurper. And I wondered, did his immediate attack cause Barristan to go on the defense and counterattack Jorah? Or was Jorah assuming Barristan's about to spill all my secrets, so I need to try and discredit him preemptively?
Yeah. I mean, yes, that's what's going on there. I think he made the wrong decision because
I do too.
because by going nuclear straight off the bat, Barristan went nuclear right back. And again,
Uh huh.
Jorah's crimes are worse. There's no question.
Yes, exactly. It was a poor decision because
Yeah.
I mean,
Y-
at the very smallest amount, Barristan fought on the side of
Yeah.
Rhaegar at the
Just
Trident.
that, yeah.
So
And
yeah,
the other thing to remember is you've just discovered that was Barristan Selmy. He always knew you were Jorah Mormont.
right. He's had time
He's had time to not only
to put
remember all the
together a
things he can spill
dossier.
about you, but he's also had time to plan this moment to say,
Right.
and anytime
Yes.
he could have outed you and he didn't. So he's been able to sit on this. If you can hold your tongue, maybe he can hold his tongue. But you go
Right.
nuclear,
Yes.
he's going to go nuclear on you, you know?
Yeah. It became a tit for tat, like immediately. Like, well, he did this. Well, he did that. And, Selmy opens Jorah's closet, which of course was full of
Oh, yeah.
skeletons that he did not want Dany to know
Yeah.
about. And, he says, Barristan says to Dany that he apologizes for deceiving her and says it was the only way to keep the Lannisters from learning I joined you, which is just another dig at Jorah, saying if I had told you who I was, this Jorah was going to rat me out to the
Right.
Lannisters.
Good point. Yeah. I mean,
So,
still, I mean, when in the cool light of day, Jorah can say, "Yeah, I sinned against you, but I have atoned many times over for it. You know, I'm your
right.
most
Yeah.
loyal subject, and I always will
Yeah.
be going forward,
Right.
unless you marry
Yeah.
Daario or keep Barristan Selmy close by."
Right. Now I'm putting my foot down. And you could see, like you mentioned, you could see the turmoil within Dany. She was was her internal thoughts were very much torn. She was angry and hurt, but conflicted because both have done so much for her.
I'm
Although, possibly, a good bit of what Jorah did for her was secretly undoing things that
going against
he
her.
set in
Yeah.
motion in the first place.
But Barristan, I mean, once the cork was out of the bottle, man, this stuff sprayed out because he then gave us his true feelings about Jamie Lannister, which
Right.
was it wasn't like,
Yeah.
oh, I forgive Jamie. He did what he had to do to save the city. It was like, oh, he and the others who sullied the cloak. So it's like, well, okay, you really were
Right. Yeah.
tamping it down these last 18 years.
What he was thinking about his other brothers is
Yeah.
not great. At least some of them, anyway. But I wondered what would Barristan Selmy, as honorable a man as he at least believes he is, what would he have done in Jamie's situation? Would he have done it differently?
As always, with Jamie and Jamie not telling anyone, does Barristan even know?
That's very possible. Even though he's a brother, of the Kingsguard, he might not know because Barristan was at the Trident when all this
Yeah,
was happening in
yeah.
King's Landing. So yes, you're right. It's possible Barristan might see him in a totally different
Exactly.
light if Jaime had
Barristan
said,
might,
here's
yeah,
why I had to do
Barristan
this.
might have done exactly the same thing and then told everyone why he did it, and the realm
Right,
becomes.
yes.
I- I've said before, I would tell everyone the reason I broke my vow is.
Right. Yeah, and another thing we get here is that yeah, he tells Dany that when the vile boy took his white cloak and then sent men to kill me that same day, that was when I had enough. I had an epiphany. I said, no, I need to go find my true king. And he obviously went and searched for Viserys. But it seemed, the way I read it anyway, is that Barristan might have accepted the removal of his removal from the Kingsguard if it hadn't been followed up by Joffrey sending men to then kill him. It was both that
Well, yeah, I mean,
pushed him over the
he's
edge.
he's 60, right? I mean, he probably was looking forward to retirement by the sea, which is what he was offered, but then you send murderers after me.
Right. He stormed out of there all in a huff, and then as he was thinking about it, he was like, that's not so
Yeah,
bad.
sounds nice.
The sea, the waves.
A young widow to sort of like be my
Uh,
accompaniment for my dying days. Yeah, I can see that. Oh, well, on the subject of a young widow, look who we found. Mm,
right. Oh yes. Yeah, yes. And Renly actually, if we remember back to when the chapter when Cat met up with Renly
yeah,
and company at
yeah.
Bitterbridge, he asked Cat if she if Barristan was with Robb because he being Renly was told that Selmy had said he was leaving to take up service with his true king.
Ah,
And it seems that was Viserys that he
right.
was referring to. And then, just to tie that up in a little bow, Renly mentioned, I went back and reread this to make sure I had my facts right. Renly mentioned that the cloak that Brienne won in that melee when Cat
Yeah,
arrived was actually being held
for
for
Barristan.
Barristan, hoping
Ah.
that Barristan was on his way to Renly, which he
I
wasn't.
wonder if that's setting up some fight between Barristan and Brienne. A
Oh,
little
yeah.
foreshadow.
I want that
Yeah,
cloak.
exactly.
I think it was the blue cloak, right?
So tie everything together with the Dany's undying dreams, because uh, her dreams were mentioned several times here, because she basically the traitors, the treason she would have to face. Yes, the betrayals she would have to face.
Right. When she was with the Undying, they told her she would face 3 treasons. One for blood, which she and we assume was
Minas
Mary
yeah.
Mazdor. One for gold, and one for love. And so, since we've got the treasons here, we might as well check in on the sets of 3 that the Undying said she'd have to deal with, I guess. So the first are 3 fires you must light: one for life, one for death, one for love. And
Okay, the pyre that brought the dragons to life is the one for life.
I think you can make an argument that fire fits all 3.
Oh,
One for
yeah.
life, the dragons; one for death, Miri Mazdor; and one for love, she
Khal
put Khal
Drogo was on
Drogo
there.
out of
Yeah,
the. He was in a vegetative
yeah.
state, and
Interesting.
she ended his life, and then burned him in the pyre. So I don't know. That's an argument
Yeah,
you could
we'll
make:
keep an
is
eye.
one fire for
Yep.
all 3.
Keep a thermometer
Yeah.
on those
Okay.
fires. Oh yeah. So 3 mounts you must ride: one to bed, one to dread, and one for love.
Yeah. So one to bed. I don't know. I mean, in this chapter, we learn that Daario is one she wouldn't mind
But just the
bedding, I
mounting
guess.
thing makes you think of Khal Drogo, surely. Oh, but
Yes.
you're thinking it's future, and this is all post Khal Drogo.
Well, it could be. I think the one for love could have been
Yeah,
Drogo, possibly, because she loved
mm,
Drogo. The one to dread has to be one of her
riding a
dragons, right?
dragon.
Whichever
That's what I'm
dragon,
thinking too.
which
Yeah, yeah.
she said in this chapter to Drogon, if you were big enough, I would
Right.
fly you over the walls. So maybe that's the one she's planning on riding herself. But it certainly seems like the Dread one is a dragon. Yeah, one to bed. We don't know yet. She's not taken anyone to bed since Drogo died, but it could be. Maybe we're about to see that it's going to be Daario. Or...
Actually, that's a good point. Maybe this actually refers to the three dragons, and the three dragons belong to, one is for her. Maybe the one to dread is for her. One to bed for her lover, and one for love for her non-lover love. I'm thinking Jorah.
Right. It could be. I hadn't thought about it from the dragon perspective. I had thought maybe the one to love was, I mean, she rides Silver. Maybe that was love because Drogo gave it to her, gave the horse to her on their wedding day. But I don't know. That one's pretty weak. If the Undying were going at that level, it'd be like, do you have anything more important that you could mention? So,
you like
anyway.
horses?
Right. You like horses? And then the three treasons you will know. That's the ones that comes up in this chapter. One for blood, one for gold, one for love. Like I said, we already mentioned Mirri Maz Duur seems the top option for one for blood.
I'm definitely feeling like Jorah could be one of the other two, but I don't know which one it is.
Yeah, I forget his name for a second. Barristan in this chapter says that Jorah was selling her secrets, trading whispers to the spider for gold and promises. I don't know that. According to Jorah, there was no gold involved. It was just promises.
But from her perspective, that's probably enough to make it seem like it's the one for gold.
Right.
But I agree. I doubt he was getting much money. He was really looking for the return. And possibly a chest of money when he got back to help him.
When he got back. He needs some starter. He needs some starter cash. The one to love, that's a tough one. To even it's one for love. Betrayed for love.
Reason you will know for love.
Yes. I've wondered if possibly Barristan first of all, did he betray her?
No.
My reason for saying for love is that did he betray her? Did he betray the Targaryens for love of honor of his role in the Kingsguard? Is where I was going with that.
I mean, there's also plenty more potential happenings here where someone might betray her for their own personal love,
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, she could fall in love with someone.
Or she could recruit someone who's in love with someone else, And...
Right. Yes.
Well, why don't you give me some background, Mackelly?
All right. Well, let's talk about Brown Ben Plum, shall we? The as you mentioned, the new commander of the Second Sons, and he tells Dany, as we mentioned earlier, that he's got a drop of dragon blood in him himself.
What, Mackelly?
He explains.
I knew this is what you were going to do. Background. Yeah. When I was reading it, I was like, I hope Mackelly explains which Aegon he's talking about.
Well, sit back and open your ears, and I just might do that for you. So Ben explains rather ambiguously that some old plum, as he puts it, married a Targaryen in King Aegon's
Now
day.
that is not enough for any detective in the real world, but Mackelly Ray is going to get to the bottom of this one.
Well, I did what I could by opening some books and doing a little research. So Ben was unaware that there have been 5 ruling Aegons, and he doesn't have a clue which King Aegon it was. However, he does know that the Plum was a lord and must have been famous because the man was said to have, well, a 6-foot-long manhood. So who was this mysterious and surely rather immobile Plum? And could he possibly have lived up to this legend? Well,
it's hard to imagine anyone noticed the plums, really. Sorry. Keep going.
I set you up. You had to take it. Well, the Plum in question was the elderly Lord Ossifer Plum. He actually came up in background way back in Davos 2 of A Clash of Kings. We talked about him marrying Princess Elena Targaryen back in 176. And the King Aegon in question was King Aegon IV, aka Aegon the Unworthy. So there we go. We've got our Plum and we've got our Aegon. So let's see what we can learn about these two. Well, like we mentioned back in Davos 2 of Clash of Kings, Lord Ossifer died on his wedding night, the night that he married Elena Targaryen. We said that he died during the bedding after conceiving a son. However, the rumor mill says different. The rumor mill says that Lord Ossifer had died before being able to consummate the marriage. The rumor mill also says it was seeing Elena naked that caused him to keel over. So, and that the child was instead fathered by King Aegon himself, who happens to be Elena's first cousin, but we're talking about Targaryens here, so that's hardly an infraction. Yeah. It's this rumor that led to the saying that Lord Ossifer had a 6-foot-long manhood. I assume the correlation is that you're buried 6 feet underground, and he
yes, I see.
impregnated his wife after he died, so therefore
very good.
His manhood.
I didn't quite understand why that led to it either, but you're right. That's exactly what it is. Yes.
Yeah, I've had some time to think about what the two things, how they were related. Anyway, regardless of who his father truly was, Elena named her son Viserys, possibly after her uncle Viserys II. Viserys Plum inherited Ossifer's lands and titles and ruled as Lord Plum. No mention of whether he inherited Ossifer's endowment.
Okay. The comparison with the television show, the duel with the champion is given to Daario, because Belwas doesn't exist in the TV show, so it's Daario takes care of this.
Okay.
And I've mentioned Monty Python once already tonight, but I'm going to mention it again because the champion, who's never named in the show, but let's call him Orson because that was his name in the book. Orson is shouting in Valyrian. He is shouting lines from Monty Python and the Holy Grail. Did you know that?
Yep. No.
He's and people. I mean, how dedicated are these people? People noticed it. People said, "Was that Monty Python?" Because there's a scene in Monty Python and the Holy Grail where John Cleese is on the wall of a castle, and he says, "Your mother was a hamster, and your father smelt of elderberries," and that is what Orson says in Valyrian.
I would have noticed. I had to have noticed that. That's one of my favorite movies.
But how would you
notice
up. It? Because it was in Valyrian. You'd have to speak Valyrian.
Oh, it was in Valyrian. I certainly wouldn't have noticed that.
There were enough nerds who spoke enough Valyrian to go, wait a minute, did he just say that his mother was some kind of small mammalian creature and his father smelt of some kind of berry?
That's fantastic. I love it. That's great.
Dany already knew that Barristan was Barristan in the show, so we don't have that big reveal. Daario kills Orson and then thankfully pees in the general direction of Meereen.
Oh, okay. Yes. Yes, much
no
better.
Ben Plum, no second assassination attempt by Mero, but the 163 crucified children are kept and weirdly counted in advance of seeing them.
Right, yes.
And Barristan in the show does not know a priori of Jorah's treachery. He does not bring that up to Dany. He didn't know he arrived. Later in the show, he receives information that says that Jorah was a spy. And he confronts Jorah with it.
Wow. That is a...
Yeah. But it's a little bit further on in the show, so I don't want to get into it because I don't know how this is going to work out in the book, and I don't know how that worked out in the TV show. But Barristan didn't come with that information. It's why he never told her. He learns it later.
Okay.
Pedantry corners. So I've got some solid pedantry here, actually. So Meereen, as you said, the western edge of Meereen is the sea shore. The northern wall is against the river that flows into the sea.
Right.
The sewers are in the north. They roll into the river, and the river takes the sewage out into the sea.
Okay, I'm with you.
Dany said, I'm not sure if Dany said it, but I think she's thinking about it, that several of the people in her camp are getting sick from drinking the river
Jorah told
water
her that.
because Jorah
Yep.
told her that, because the Meereenese use it as a toilet, but they themselves drink from wells within the city.
Right.
That's how they stay healthy. The thing is, the river flows the other way. There's no way they're drawing water from downstream of the sewers. They would have to go all the way to the northwest corner to draw brackish sewage water in order to drink it.
Ah,
They're going to be taking water from before the sewers, and so that just doesn't make any sense.
I see. Hmm.
You're camped in the field to the east of the city, where the water in the river is clean.
Right.
Why are you walking past the sewers to get dirty water and bring it back?
Yes, I follow you. Yeah. Yeah, that doesn't make any sense. It's definitely pedantry. I follow you.
Thanks. Yep. You've got one, Mackelly. Why don't you tell us?
Well, it's about an observation Dany makes during the fight between the hero of Meereen and Strong Belwas. I think it's Jorah says that the hero needs to quit trying to basically poke Belwas and instead ride him down like a Dothraki would, because all that Belwas has to do is just avoid the tip of the lance and he's fine. And Dany, the next time that the hero makes a pass, notices and she thinks to herself, he's right. The hero is riding at Belwas like a Westerosi knight would in the lists. And I wondered, how in the world does Dany, who's never stepped foot in Westeros, know so much about Westerosi jousting technique?
That's solid pedantry, Mackelly. That is solid pedantry. It's funny actually because as you described the entire conversation, all you had to do was turn it around. Have Jorah say, uh, he's fighting like a Westerosi in the lists.
Right.
Makes perfect sense. He knows. And for Dany to go, oh yeah, why isn't he just trampling all over him like a Dothraki would? She
Right.
would recognize that. So
Yes.
you're right. The lines are the wrong way around.
Uh-huh. Right.
I'm not going to give it A plus, but I'm going to give it an A because that's
Okay.
good.
I'll take an
Yeah.
A.
Uh-huh.
I'm not too proud. A is good.
All right, news and notes.
Okay, so the first thing I wanted to mention is that there will not be an episode of our lovely show the week of August 15th due to some scheduling issues. However, there will be a unique twist on the August 8th episode, which is episode 202, Tyrion 7, so you'll want to give a listen to find out
You
what that is.
definitely will. That's exciting. House of the Dragon racked up 8 Emmy Award nominations. Oh, by the way, on the subject of Emmy Awards, have you watched any of Jury Duty
I
yet?
did. I meant to mention that in the opening, but I forgot. I'm 2 episodes in, and I have laughed out loud so many times.
I knew it would appeal to you. I knew it would.
Oh.
I think it's when the kid Noah says that he's a racist, and
That was.
Ronald's face.
He said, "Oh no, I'm really not. Someone just told me that would work," and he was like, "Who told you that?" And he starts looking over it, at whatever the main guy's name is.
Ronald.
Yes,
Ronald.
and he's like,
Uh,
no, please don't say it's me." Oh, it
uh,
is hilarious.
I knew you'd like it. Yeah, but anyway, back on topic. House of the Dragon has racked up 8 award nominations, a bunch for all the costumes, the special effects, the makeup, but also for Outstanding Drama Series.
All right. That's great. Also, Martin gave an update on The Iron Throne, which is a stage production that he's involved with. He says that he had a great meeting with producers and scripts are coming along, and that he's very excited about it all. However, he won't give a timeline. It seems he's learned the hard way about doing that with Winds of Winter, which is probably
Speaking
advisable.
of Winds, yeah. Speaking of Winds of Winter, George Martin says that he's writing almost every day. Writing, rewriting, editing, making steady progress, but he admits it's not as fast as we'd like, but it is progress. We'll take it.
Yeah. And we have a new Buy Me a Coffee sustainer.
Oh, lovely.
Greenfire has joined the Knight of the Realm. The
We
Knights
met
of the Realm.
Greenfire
Yes.
at the 200th episode, yeah.
Yes. And so we're very excited to have you on board. We're looking forward to our interactions with you. So thank you very much for joining our sustainership. It really it means so much to us when people join
Yeah,
our
really
Buy
does.
Me a Coffee sustainers.
Yeah. And on that subject, thank you to Ryan for 5 cups of Arbor Gold after the live episode. We had a lot of fun doing it, and it was nice to be rewarded. So thank you, Ryan.
Yes, thank you very much, Ryan.
All right, let's conclude this one. So Dany now has 2 respected, fiercely loyal knights of Westeros at her disposal. But right now, she trusts neither. Can she get over that? I think she's going to. I think she has to.
If you think about what a boon it is for her to get Barristan Selmy on her
Yeah.
side. Now, maybe not in Essos, they might not know who he is, but if she gets to Westeros, that'll hold some cachet.
Yeah, yeah. Actually, quite a bit more than Jorah Mormont. So that might, if she has to choose between them, if they can't work together, that could be bad news for Jorah.
Right, yeah. His Jorah's immense jealousy of any man who gets near Dany really it backed him into a corner here at the end of this chapter because it felt like he was immediately trying to attack Barristan. And like we were discussing earlier, was
Hmm.
it because he was afraid? He's like, uh-oh, he's about to reveal what he knows. I better discredit him quickly. Possibly he just couldn't help himself. And any man that he feels is a threat to his relationship with Dany, he just immediately has to try and tear down.
Yeah. But we're pretty confident she's sending them both up the sewers. So is that a suicide mission? Is it just a loyalty test to see if they'll do it? Is it the way into Meereen? Is it going to
Right.
actually be the secret here?
Yeah, so what would have to happen? They'd have to get into the sewers, get into the city, overtake a gate, the guards at a gate, and raise the
Yeah,
gate, I guess. I guess
that
that
could
would be the
work.
plan. I don't know what
Yeah.
else they would do, just 2 of them in there.
I,
So,
I caught a slightly different plan on the TV show, but I'm not sure if that's actually what happens, so I won't
okay.
voice it.
Yeah, I'm sure there's other options to be
Yeah.
considered. But do you think should Barristan have gone to Jorah first? Or he says he didn't because he was afraid that Jorah was still, in the Lannister
Yes, on
slash
the payroll.
Baratheon, yeah,
Yeah.
payroll. So I guess that's why he didn't. But he has seen Jorah's loyalty firsthand now, but also he knows that Jorah's been betraying Dany since the beginning. So maybe that colors the way he sees Jorah's actions.
Yeah. I will say in the TV show, when he learns of Jorah's treachery, he goes to Jorah and Jorah says, "Can I speak to the Queen?" To Dany, and Barristan says, "You will never be alone in her presence again."
Oh,
So,
okay, yes.
and will Daenerys act on her thoughts about Daario? She's been lonely for a while. Daario is hunky with his gold tooth.
Yeah, and his blue eyes and his blue beard.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
I mean, you're painting quite the picture.
Kind of. Though when I picture him, I kind of picture a parrot. Or some sort of like cockatoo or something with all
Yeah,
those
yeah.
vibrant colors that he's sporting
Not a
there.
cockatrice, though.
No, no, definitely not that. No.
So one thing we talked about this before, actually, that Dario is the kind of guy who probably is a bit of a lover of women, I'm guessing,
Right. Sure.
and probably isn't used to having to sort of bide his time
Uh-huh.
and beg and plead. And I wonder if he's going to be put off by her not falling into his lap as soon as they met, kind of thing.
Could be, or maybe he would enjoy the challenge of actually
Yeah,
wooing a woman instead of, just
yeah, yeah.
taking her or whatever. But one
We shall
final thing
see.
about Dany and what was revealed to her at the end of this chapter. It must be. It's got to be really tough for her to learn that the man she thought was her ride or die, her closest and oldest
Yeah.
friend in Essos, has been selling her out. I'll say since the beginning, because she doesn't know when it stopped. I would think he can make an argument that it stopped when he outed the wine merchant.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
he could have just let her be killed,
Right,
but he didn't.
because that would have fulfilled the rest of the deal he made, and he
Right.
because that would have fulfilled the rest of the deal he made, and he
Right.
prevented it rather than letting it happen. Yeah,
Yes.
that's legit.
So, but still, it's
I,
got to be because she doesn't have a lot of people in the world. She's never had a lot of people, and she thought she had this man as her rock. So it's got to be tough.
so next week we get Tyrion, and he it's a sexy episode.
It is.
So I'm looking forward to hearing episode 202.
Yes,
It'll be fun.
it will. Yes, you'll definitely want to tune in to catch that one.
Uh-huh. All right, there's 4 ways that you can help us. You could leave us a positive review. You can buy some merchandise at ghostsofharrenhal.threadless.com. You can buy us a cup of Arbor Gold at buymeacoffee.com/ghostharrenhal. Become a sustainer as Greenfire did at the Lord Paramount or Knight of the Realm level. There are so many fun benefits, you will not be disappointed. Or you can just donate directly to our cause through our website, ghostsofharrenhal.buzzsprout.com.
And if you're looking for more ways to interact with us, keep up on the latest Ghosts of Harrenhal news and developments, well, check out our social medias. You can follow us on Twitter at Ghost Harrenhal. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Discord, and YouTube.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.